"Ma'am, this cabin isn't for passengers like her." The words hit harder than turbulence, not whispered, not discreet, spoken loud, sharp, and polished, like a blade. Passengers looked up from their pre-boarding coffee and glossy magazines, eyes flicking toward the slim black girl in the Navy school blazer standing beside seat 2A. Leah Whitmore didn't flinch. She simply stood there, boarding pass in hand, backpack snug over her shoulder, trying to ignore the sudden heat rising to her face. "Excuse me?" she asked carefully. The flight attendant turned around, her platinum blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. Her name tag read Sandra, but her smile didn't say welcome. It said problem. "I said," Sandra repeated, louder now, "this cabin is reserved for first-class ticketed guests. Real guests." A businessman across the aisle shifted uncomfortably. Another pulled his AirPods out. Someone 2 rows back muttered, "Seriously?" Leah cleared her throat. "This is my seat." Sandra didn't even look at the boarding pass Leah extended. Instead, she crossed her arms and let out a condescending sigh. "Sweetheart, we've seen this trick before. You people always try to sneak in." That did it. The entire cabin fell quiet. Not peaceful quiet, hostile quiet. The kind where everyone knows something ugly is happening, but no one's brave enough to stop it. Leah blinked. "Excuse me?" Sandra waved her hand. "You can make this easy or hard. You either take your little drama back to coach, or we get someone in here who can explain it in handcuffs." She didn't wait for Leah to answer. Instead, Sandra snapped her fingers toward the front galley and called out, "Security! Tell us where you're watching from, and if you've ever seen someone humiliated for simply sitting where they belong." Within 20 seconds, an airport officer was walking down the aisle like he already knew who he was coming for. Leah didn't cry. Not yet. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She stood her ground like she'd practiced for debate finals, like this was a podium, not a war zone. "This is my seat," she repeated. 2A, Whitmore, Leah. Sandra scoffed, grabbing the boarding pass from her hand like it was a crumpled receipt. "We'll see about that." The officer, a tall white man with a heavy build and mirrored sunglasses still on, didn't even ask her name. "Step off the plane, miss. Now." Leah's voice didn't shake, but her fingers did. "Why?" "Ma'am claims you're attempting to fly fraudulently. We'll verify it at the desk." "Ma'am," Leah repeated flatly, eyes flicking to Sandra. "Ma'am never looked at my ticket." "Oh." Someone in row 4 reached for their phone. Someone else started recording. Leah didn't know their names, but she knew this feeling. This moment. The one where you're both invisible and the center of attention. A voice in her head whispered, "Don't make a scene." But her body said, "You don't have to." They already did. They escorted her off the plane in silence. Not a single passenger spoke up. Not a single attendant intervened. Not a single apology was offered. Her ticket, valid. Her ID, in order. Her voice, ignored. The holding room smelled like bleach and bad decisions. Leah sat on a molded plastic chair under fluorescent lights that buzzed like a dying bee. The officer leaned on the counter, clicking his pen. "So, who paid for the ticket?" he asked. "My school," she replied. "I won a national speech competition. They sent me here. All expenses covered." He didn't write that down. "Name of the program?" She gave it. "Your parents know you're flying first class?" She looked him dead in the eyes. "My mother's a nurse. She worked the night shift. My aunt made sure everything was approved." "Aunt, huh?" he said, raising one eyebrow. "What's her name?" Leah stared back. "Geraldine Banks." The pen froze. He chuckled softly. "That name's familiar." She didn't respond. He stood up, cracked his neck. "Sit tight." 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then the door opened, but not with him. A different woman entered. Officer uniform, softer face, but a colder expression. She glanced at Leah, then at the clipboard in her hand. "You can go." Leah sat up straighter. "That's it?" "Yes, ma'am." Are you going to tell me what changed? The officer didn't look at her. Let's just say the right person made the wrong people very nervous. When Leah stepped back into the terminal, the air felt colder. She walked past gate A19 in silence. The gate agents looked like they'd seen a ghost. Sandra? Nowhere in sight. A man in a Navy suit with a Liberty Airways badge was quietly speaking into his headset. When he noticed Leah, he froze. She walked past him and reboarded the plane. Same seat, same cabin, different silence. This one was tight, stretched thin, uncomfortable. She sat down in 2A like she never left, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes forward. No one said a word, but every passenger looked at her like they now knew who really didn't belong. And it wasn't her. 30,000 feet above the ground, Leah didn't think about Sandra, or the officer, or the looks. She thought about what her aunt had told her once, years ago, after another teacher had accused her of plagiarism because her vocabulary wasn't normal for her age. People will always think you're somewhere you're not supposed to be. Let them. Just make sure when they try to push you out, the system pushes back. Now, the system had. And Leah, quiet, black, 16-year-old Leah, had just watched a woman lose her job over a lie and hadn't said a single word. When Leah reboarded the plane, she didn't expect anyone to say sorry. They didn't. Not the gate agent who avoided eye contact, not the cabin crew who smiled just a little too tight, and certainly not the older white woman in 2B who clutched her bag closer as Leah sat down again in 2A. No one said a word, but everyone said everything, with their silence. She placed her bag under the seat again, fastened her seatbelt, and stared out the window. The plane hadn't pushed back yet. The captain's voice hadn't come on. They were waiting. Waiting for what, she didn't know. But she had a feeling this wasn't over. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. Auntie G. Just a name. No message. That's how they communicated. Sparse, silent, but clear. You're good. I'm in. Stay quiet. Watch. Leah exhaled slowly and let the hum of the cabin settle in. Then came the shift. A tall black man in a navy blue suit stepped into the cabin from the galley, flanked by two women holding tablets. He didn't wear a name tag, but he wore authority like it was tailored for him. Leah watched him as he walked straight to the lead flight attendant. There was no yelling, no pointing, just murmurs. But whatever he said made the woman pale. 2 minutes later, Sandra, the same woman who accused Leah, was escorted off the plane. Not quietly, not with dignity. Passengers whispered. No one clapped, but Leah didn't need applause. She had something better. Accountability. Once the doors closed again, the captain's voice finally came through. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We'll be pushing back shortly. Thank you for your patience. No explanation. No mention of what just happened. No words at all about the teenage girl who had just been removed, questioned, then reseated in the same spot with nothing but a pause in her step. 10 minutes into the flight, a new flight attendant approached. A younger woman. Latina, maybe late 20s, wearing a silver name badge that read Alicia. She crouched beside Leah's seat. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Leah looked at her. For what? She asked. Alicia swallowed. For not saying anything. I saw how she talked to you. I wanted to speak up, but that's not how this place works. Leah tilted her head. And how does it work? Alicia glanced toward the galley. People like her get protected, until they don't. Leah didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Alicia stood again. If you need anything, just press the button. She left a bottle of water on the tray table and walked off. Leah reached into her backpack and pulled out her planner, more habit than intention. Her fingers brushed the invitation letter from the oratory summit. She didn't look at it. She knew the words by heart, but her hand paused on something tucked between the pages, a sealed envelope. No name, just a gold sticker across the flap. Her aunt had given it to her 2 days ago before she left for the airport. "Don't open it unless something happens," she'd said. Leah stared at the envelope for a long moment, then slid it back in. Something had already happened, and she had a feeling more was coming. The man in 4C, the one who had been recording earlier, caught her eye when she glanced toward the aisle. He gave her a small nod, acknowledgement without intrusion. She nodded back. The screen in front of her flickered to life. Safety demonstration. She tuned it out. Instead, she watched her reflection in the window. Watched the clouds thicken as they climbed altitude. Watched the sunlight break through like truth squeezing its way into a lie. People like her don't belong here. The words weren't hers, but they followed her, stuck like gum on the bottom of her shoe. Leah closed her eyes. She didn't need their acceptance. She needed them to know they were wrong. 30 minutes into the flight, a soft chime rang. The captain's voice came through again, this time lower, tighter. "Miss Whitmore, could you please make your way to the forward galley? You're being requested." Every head in first class turned. Again. She rose without a word and made her way past rows of stairs, whispering mouths, and lowered phones. Sandra may have been gone, but the judgment had stayed. At the galley, a woman in a gray pantsuit waited. She had an earpiece, a digital tablet, and the posture of someone who didn't blink unless necessary. "Leah Whitmore," she asked. Leah nodded. "I'm Marlene West, Ethics Compliance Liaison for Liberty Airways." Leah's eyebrow lifted slightly. "You have a liaison on board?" "We do now." Behind Marlene, a screen was open, showing security footage of the gate, including the exact moment Sandra pointed at Leah and mouthed something to a gate agent. The freeze frame caught Sandra mid-sneer. Marlene didn't look at the screen. She looked at Leah. "You don't have to say anything, but I want you to know what you experienced was unacceptable. It's already been filed. Internal review, independent counsel, HR, the full slate." Leah nodded once. Marlene continued. "Your aunt has requested that all documentation be sent directly to Unified Holdings." Leah froze. "So this isn't just internal?" Marlene shook her head. "Not anymore. Geraldine Banks has escalated the incident to the National Aviation Ethics Index." The air felt heavier. Leah didn't say anything, but her eyes did. Marlene looked down at her tablet. "Until then," she said, "please know, you are exactly where you're supposed to be." Back at her seat, Leah sat differently. Not straighter, not taller, just more still, more grounded. Not trying to prove anything, not waiting for anyone to approve her presence. 2A belonged to her. And now, so did the narrative. She wasn't the girl who got removed. She was the girl who returned, the one who stayed. From the seat behind her, someone whispered to their companion. Leah didn't turn around, but she caught the words. "She must be someone important." Leah smiled faintly, not because it was true, but because it never should have mattered. 3 hours after takeoff, the plane glided into the early morning light above Washington, D.C. The descent felt smoother than expected, as if the plane itself knew it needed to land quietly after everything that had happened. Leah sat still in her first-class seat. She hadn't slept. She hadn't cried. She had barely touched the meal they brought out, served by a new flight attendant who kept calling her ma'am, like she was royalty or radioactive. Across the aisle, the man in 4C was still watching her in intervals. Not in a creepy way, more like a careful one. She'd caught glimpses of his screen earlier. Emails, government headers, .gov domains. The man wasn't just a businessman. He was someone who knew things. He stood up as they landed and nodded to her again. "Keep your eyes open, Miss Whitmore." She blinked. "Do I know you?" He smiled politely. "Not yet." And then he disappeared into the crowd. Outside the gate, the terminal buzzed with the usual energy. Rolling suitcases, families reuniting, business calls on speakerphone. But the second Leah stepped past security, a woman was waiting for her. A black woman in her late 50s, tailored charcoal suit, short natural curls with specks of silver, and a press badge clipped to her lapel. "Leah Whitmore?" Leah stiffened. "Yes?" The woman offered a warm but restrained smile. "I'm Dana Caldwell, with the Washington Record. I was told you might be willing to speak." I didn't call anyone." Dana nodded. "You didn't have to. Your name was on a report leaked through Liberty Airways ethics portal last night. Someone posted the footage to a private oversight channel. I happened to be monitoring it. Your aunt declined to comment, but she didn't deny the authenticity." Leah's stomach turned. "I didn't know it was going public." Dana didn't blink. "Neither did the airline." She handed Leah a card. "If you ever want to go on the record, call me. And if not, stay sharp. Things move fast when the wrong people realize they're being watched." Leah stepped outside the terminal into a wall of heat and light. DC summer mornings didn't wait for anyone. A black electric sedan was waiting at the curb. The driver stood silently, holding a sign that read, "L. Whitmore." Inside, the AC kissed her skin like relief. The screen on the dash flashed a message, "Connected, G. Banks." Her aunt's voice came through the speaker. "You good?" Geraldine asked. "I'm fine," Leah replied softly. "Good," Geraldine said, "because that was just the prologue." Geraldine Banks wasn't just Leah's aunt. She was the compliance muscle behind nearly every major federal transportation contract in the country. Her job wasn't to talk. It was to track, certify, approve, or revoke. 20 years ago, she'd been an air marshal. 15 years ago, she designed the first ethics scoring system used by the FAA. Now, she held the final override codes for the National Aviation Ethics Index, used by 41 airports and counting. She didn't make headlines. She made calls that ended headlines. Back at her townhouse in Shaw, Geraldine poured herself a glass of water while Leah sat on the couch, still in her blazer, still carrying the weight of a cabin full of silence. "I didn't mean for all this," Leah said quietly. Geraldine tilted her head. "You didn't do anything. That's the point. But now people are watching. I didn't ask for it. You didn't have to. They made you the center of the story when they tried to erase you." Leah looked away. "The compliance lady on the plane said you flagged the incident." "I did," Geraldine said. "I didn't even need to. The system caught it. But I made sure it didn't die in a folder somewhere." "Why?" Geraldine walked to the cabinet, pulled out a dusty binder, and dropped it on the table. Inside were old photos, newspaper clippings, complaint reports. Leah flipped one open. Her mother's name. "Because your mom got dragged off a train in 1987 for sitting in the wrong car, despite her valid Amtrak pass. It never made the news. No one got fired. She buried it and moved on." Geraldine's voice sharpened. "But we don't bury things anymore." That night, Leah couldn't sleep. She turned on her phone. The inbox had grown like mold. 32 new emails, 47 DM requests, 13 voicemails, one from the Oratory Summit program director. "We're sorry this happened. Your speech slot remains secured. Please let us know if you need extra support." Leah scrolled, then stopped. A forwarded email from a .gov domain. Subject line, "Internal, Liberty Airways incident flagged by NAEI Ethics Compliance System." She tapped it. In the body of the email, "Per protocol, incident registered under Whitmore 271, cross-referenced with CRS 182, racial bias pattern 4B. Airline ethics score automatically downgraded from compliant to at risk. Temporary freeze placed on 1.6 Bs in associated contracts, pending review." Leah's jaw dropped. She'd read that right? Right? $1.6 billion, not thousand. Geraldine's voice echoed again in her mind. "You didn't do anything. That's the point." At 7:13 the next morning, Geraldine entered the living room with a tablet in hand. "They've issued a response," she said flatly. Leah sat up. "The airline?" Geraldine nodded and read aloud. Liberty Airways deeply regrets the incident involving passenger Leah Whitmore. The airline is committed to diversity, equity, and accountability. The crew member in question has been placed on indefinite suspension pending investigation. Suspension, Leah repeated. Not fired? Firing doesn't fix systems, Geraldine said. It only replaces faces. She flipped the tablet around. A headline blared across the screen. Airline faces 1.6B freeze over teen's first-class incident. Compliance system reacts swiftly. The photo beneath it? Leah, taken from the back, walking alone toward gate A19. Caption: Passenger Leah Whitmore, 16. Escorted off plane in incident triggering ethics freeze. No screams, no meltdown, no viral tears, just a girl, walking alone, holding her dignity like it was heavier than her carry-on. That afternoon, Geraldine stood in front of a camera, not for a news crew, for a hearing. The FAA had summoned her to testify as part of the emergency review panel. Leah wasn't allowed in the room, but she watched the live stream with the rest of the world. Geraldine's words were calm, measured, but fire lived underneath. When systems only respond to outrage, they fail the people they were built to protect. The only reason this case got flagged wasn't because someone screamed loud enough, but because a 16-year-old girl stayed calm. Her stillness tripped the wires the system was built on. That's how justice should work. Liberty Airways, Regional HQ. Tuesday, 8:42 a.m. The glass door slammed shut behind Marla Jensen, Regional VP of Operations. Her heels struck the polished wood floor like a warning shot as she stormed into the executive meeting room. In her hand was a 3-page report, red-stamped, NAEI Ethics Breach. Level 4B confirmed. The room was full. Legal counsel, PR director, senior HR. No one spoke. Because what they were facing wasn't just bad press. It was the very real possibility that their airline was about to lose federal status for violating national ethics codes. Across the building, Sandra, the flight attendant, sat in a plain, windowless room, a camera recording her every movement. She had just been informed. She was now indefinitely suspended. Her name was added to the Racial Profiling Risk Watch List. And if the FAA's new ethics rule passed after the hearings, she could be permanently banned from working for any U.S. commercial airline, not just grounded, erased. Meanwhile, Leah was standing somewhere else entirely. The Oratory Summit Hall, the same venue she was supposed to speak at before the whole mess happened. The event organizer looked nervous as he approached. "We can move your speech if you're not ready." Leah shook her head. "I'm not hiding. If anything." She paused, lifting her hand mid-air like she could still hear the moment Sandra called security. "This proves exactly why we have to speak." At 10:00 a.m. sharp, a second FAA hearing convened. No cameras this time. Just Liberty Airways representatives, 3 FAA Ethics Board members, and a surprise guest. Senator Joanne Martinez, one of the original sponsors of the NAEI Ethics Framework. She didn't look at any paperwork. She stared directly at the airline's lead rep. "Before I hear one apology, I want a straight answer. How does a black girl with a valid first-class ticket end up in handcuffs before takeoff?" Silence. Finally, Marla opened the incident folder. The crew made a judgment call based on prior cases. There have been incidents involving fake tickets from teenagers. "White teenagers?" Senator Martinez cut her off. Marla swallowed. "Ma'am, the crew wasn't trained to profile." Then why did they? At that exact moment, Geraldine Banks was in a different room. Not to testify. She'd already done that. She was overseeing the ethics dashboard. On her monitor, the NAEI Ethics Compliance System. And on the screen, flashing red next to Liberty Airways. Status: at risk. Contracts: frozen. 1.6B. FAA alert level. Orange ethics audit deadline. 72 hours remaining. She didn't type anything at first, just stared at the numbers. Then she clicked Command Input and recorded one line. Per Whitmore Protocol, airline must submit third-party audit or face full downgrade. By nightfall, Hatched Whitmore Protocol was trending at number 3, not because of outrage, but because, for the first time, the system had responded automatically. No one needed to go viral. No one had to beg for justice. And at the center of it all, a 17-year-old girl who still hadn't said a single word to the media. At Reagan Airport, Leah sat quietly at her gate waiting to fly back to New York. A white teenage girl approached her, hesitant. "Hey, are you Leah Whitmore?" Leah turned, cautious. "Yes, I just wanted to say, what happened to you was awful, and it mattered that you didn't scream. You just stood your ground. I don't know if I could have done that." Leah offered a soft smile. Sometimes silence is louder than shouting. Back in Liberty's internal conference room, tension was thick. "The CEO just called," an assistant said, entering the room. "Our entire federal contract portfolio has been frozen." "For how long?" Marla asked. "Until we prove total reform. That means retraining every flight crew under the Whitmore Protocol." "And if we don't?" she asked flatly. The assistant didn't blink. "We'll be downgraded, and that means no access to 9 major U.S. airports." That night, Geraldine sat in her small apartment in D.C., organizing files. Leah walked out of the bathroom, hair still damp, eyes clearer than they had been in days. "Why'd they name the protocol after me?" she asked softly. Geraldine chuckled. "I didn't. The system assigned it randomly. Whitmore 271. Journalist picked it up before I could change it." Leah sank into the armchair. "I don't want to be the face of injustice." "You're not," Geraldine said. "You're the proof that power doesn't always have to scream." Then, as if the universe wanted to prove her point, Leah's phone lit up with an alert. From FAA. Subject: Ethics Index Update, Liberty Airways. Airline has failed to meet compliance deadline. Effective 6:00 a.m. tomorrow, Liberty will be downgraded to non-compliant status. Leah looked up, her eyes catching the faintest sliver of dawn outside the window. It wasn't the runway lights. It wasn't a plane in the sky. It was the soft, steady light of a system finally standing on the right side of history. The dawn light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Unified Safety Holdings' Ethics War Room. Geraldine Banks stood at the head of the long conference table, watching the real-time feed of incident reports scrolling across a giant monitor. 14 flagged cases in 24 months, all involved claims of racial profiling. 5 incidents traced back to the same Liberty Airways cabin crew that tried to eject Leah. Geraldine tapped her pen against her notepad. She didn't need to say a word. Her team already knew what came next. She called the airport coalition chairs of the Northeast region: Boston Logan, Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta, O'Hare Chicago, and BWI Baltimore Washington. Each had a direct line to her office. "Good morning," she began, voice calm but firm. "As of last night, Liberty Airways is non-compliant under NAEI Level 4B. Effective immediately, suspend all partnership services, ground handling, security protocols, lounge access, for 72 hours pending your own local audit." There was a pause on every line. Geraldine leaned forward. "You heard me. If they want to regain compliance, they must submit a third-party audit and institute full crew retraining under the Whitmore Protocol. Otherwise, you keep them grounded." She hung up, then turned to her staff. "Draft the announcement. Notify the FAA liaison, then circle back to each chair to confirm execution." By 9:15 a.m., the terminals at 4 major airports were in chaos. At Boston Logan, digital departure boards blinked, "Service suspended, Liberty Airways." Business travelers stopped mid-stride. Families heading home blinked at their canceled plans. Atlanta's lounge doors clanged shut. Chicago's security desks relayed automated messages. Baltimore parking garages cleared out as caretakers rushed to fetch stranded crews. All told, $1.6 billion in annual security and ground service contracts had gone dark. Leah, meanwhile, sat in a small cafe near the Oratory Summit venue. sipping cafe au lait. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Have you seen this? A headline. 4 airports suspend airline over racial profiling. Subheadline. 1.6B contracts frozen in wake of teen's ordeal. Her heart skipped. Everything had escalated far beyond one flight. A pair of supporters slid into the seat across from her. Both former debate opponents turned friends. "Leah," one of them said, voice tight with concern. "How are you holding up?" She folded her hands around the cup. "I'm okay. It's just a lot." Her friend nodded. "People are calling you a hero, but it's bigger than that." Leah looked out the window at the sidewalk bustle. "I never wanted to be the story." "But you are," the other friend said softly. "And now you can make the rest of it count." Back in the Liberty boardroom, CFO Nathan Wu stared at his tablet. His knuckles were white. $64 million a month, he whispered. Times 25 months. That's $1.6 billion dead weight. Marketing Director Allison Reed swallowed. "We have 24 hours to spin this. Apology tour, internal press release, social media. Anything to salvage our brand." Nathan shook his head. "Spin won't cut it. We need real reform. Jerry Banks isn't bluffing." By noon, Washington area press trucks lined up outside Unified Safety Holdings. Channel 4 ran live shots of Geraldine emerging from her car, flanked by security. Reporters shouted questions. "Ms. Banks, why freeze the contracts? Can Liberty recover? What message does this send to other airlines?" Geraldine gave a single nod, stepped up to the mic, and spoke clearly. "When systems are built to protect the public, they must be blind to status and furious about injustice. Liberty Airways failed that test. Today's suspension isn't punishment. It's a chance to correct course. Let it be the model of how accountability works." She turned and walked inside. No applause, just stunned silence. Then cameras cut away. Leah's afternoon speeches were packed. Her voice carried across the marble hall, using her own experience as the opening salvo. "We often learn that justice only arrives at the volume of our outrage," she said. "But what if justice also belongs to those who stay calm, watchful, and demand it through established systems?" We saw it happen, not because we hollered louder, but because we stood still and insisted on what was right. The audience sat riveted, particularly the older women with sympathetic eyes, nodding in slow, approving rhythms. That evening, Geraldine reviewed the initial third-party audit responses. Quick reads showed Liberty's senior management had quietly removed 5 cabin crew members, offering remedial bias training. But the audit flagged dozens more unreported near misses and uninvestigated complaints. She tapped her tablet, sending a secure message. "Draft Level 5 prep. Send to FAA immediate attention. We need full suspension until a full ethics overhaul." Her assistant raised an eyebrow. "Level 5 means national grounding." Geraldine let the weight of her words hang. Then she nodded. "Exactly." Across town, Leah wandered the Independence Avenue sidewalks, her speech over. She passed by a newsstand plastered with her face, and the face of Senator Martinez, who'd grilled Liberty's reps. One headline read, "Whitmore, the girl who turned silence into a law." A pang hit Leah's chest, not guilt, but awe. She placed a hand over her heart. Somewhere inside her, a quiet voice whispered, "This is only the beginning." That night, in a dimly lit corner of the summit after-party, Leah found the 2 flight attendants who had been the closest to her during boarding, Alicia and Jonas. They'd both been quietly supportive. "I just wanted to say," Alicia began, voice soft, "I'm sorry I couldn't speak up sooner." Leah reached out, squeezing her hand. "You did what you could. Now we all can do more." Jonas nodded. "Tonight I'll talk to my union rep. We need better protections for cabin staff too." Leah looked from Alicia to Jonas. "Thank you. We win only if everyone wins." The next morning, the FAA issued an emergency bulletin. Liberty Airways NAEI status would drop to non-compliant at 6 o'clock a.m., effective immediately. All federal contracts, security, ground handling, fueling, would remain frozen until a full ethics overhaul was verified by third-party inspectors. Within hours, over 30 regional carriers filed motions to take over Liberty's suspended routes. Travel blogs buzzed, "Flight deals you can't miss until Liberty gets its act together." In her DC townhouse, Geraldine and Leah sat across from each other. A chessboard lay between them. Leah made a move. Geraldine raised her glass of water. "Check," Leah smiled, "but not checkmate." They both laughed. Two women, different generations, joined by a common fight. The board game pieces gleamed under the lamp, each pawn and knight a reminder of how small actions could change the entire game. The late afternoon sun painted the city skyline gold as Geraldine Banks settled behind her mahogany desk. Her reflection stared back from the polished surface of her phone's screen just before it rang. The caller ID read, "Liberty HQ." She paused, then tapped "Answer." "Geraldine." "Hello?" Voice. Firm, apologetic. "Ms. Banks, this is Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Liberty Airways. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Geraldine let a polite silence fill the air, listening to the faint hum of Liberty's call center in the background. Geraldine. "Go on, Mr. Caldwell." He cleared his throat. "First, on behalf of everyone at Liberty, I want to apologize for the incident involving your niece. The way she was treated, under any circumstances, is unacceptable." Geraldine leaned back, folding her hands. "Mr. Caldwell, I appreciate the sentiment, but this isn't about my niece." He sounded momentarily taken aback. Of course it's about Leah Whitmore. She was wronged in the most public way." Geraldine, voice calm, unwavering. "No, it's about the system you built." Silence. Caldwell. "I'm not sure I understand." Geraldine. "Your airline has flown millions of passengers safely for decades. That's a system built on trust. Trust that you protect people equally. Instead, one crew found it acceptable to profile a 16-year-old black girl and call police on her. That wasn't an isolated mistake. The NAEI flagged 14 similar events in 2 years. Caldwell's tone grew defensive. "Our crew handles hundreds of flights daily. Things happen, unintended incidents." Geraldine. "Unintended or unexamined?" She recited the figures from memory. 14 profiling complaints, 5 involving first-class passengers, 4 airports in lockdown, $1.6 billion in contracts frozen. She didn't blame him for each number. She held him accountable for them aggregating into a pattern. Geraldine. "Patterns matter, because when patterns form, they become policy, and policy is what you owe to the public." Caldwell. "We've already suspended the crew, launched an internal audit, and promised retraining. Isn't that enough?" Geraldine paused, letting the question hang. She pictured the faces of flight attendants like Alicia and Jonas, good people who'd stayed silent. Then she thought of Leah, steady and calm. Geraldine. "You've reined in your staff. Good start. But it's not enough. I'm not negotiating private settlements or one-off apologies. If you want Liberty back on those Northeast runways, you'll overhaul your entire ethics training, publicly, independently, under the Whitmore Protocol." Caldwell. "You don't understand the cost." Geraldine, cutting him off. "I do. I froze $1.6 billion of your contracts. I know exactly how much rides on your ethics score." She watched the color drain from his voice. She could almost see the calculations. How many planes grounded, how many suitcases delayed, how many boardroom tempers flared. Caldwell, quietly. "And if we don't comply?" Geraldine. "Then you remain non-compliant. Your NAEI status drops to level 5. You lose access to all federal contracts. You vanish from every major U.S. hub." Another pause, heavier this time. Caldwell. That would effectively put us out of business." Geraldine's answer was soft but firm. "Then you'd better decide what kind of airline you want to be." He exhaled, a sound of concession. Understood. We'll prepare the third-party audit and share the results publicly within 48 hours. Geraldine, start now. Any delay will cost you more than contracts. It will cost your reputation, perhaps forever. She tapped end, then set the phone face down. Across town, Leah Whitmore was wrapping up a day of media interviews in New York. She'd flown up that morning, wanting to see for herself how people were reacting, and to avoid the swirl of politics in D.C. A freelance reporter from The Atlantic handed her a tablet. They posted the transcript of your aunt's call. She felt a twinge of pride. Not for herself. She hadn't even spoken. But for the calm she'd maintained. Because that calm had given her aunt the leverage to reshape an entire industry. Back in D.C., Geraldine convened her inner circle. They sat around the same long table where they'd issued the initial suspension orders. Geraldine, Liberty has agreed to full public audit under Whitmore Protocol. They'll publish every complaint, every training record, every crew evaluation. It's the strongest transparency clause NAEI has ever forced. Her ethics officer, a former FAA inspector named Carla Reyes, cracked a smile. You're basically writing the next chapter in federal aviation law. Geraldine shook her head. We're just enforcing what we already had. The rules weren't followed. Someone had to remind them. A junior analyst piped up. We're getting queries from Europe. They want to know if NAEI is exportable. Other regulators might adopt our model. That earned a nod from Geraldine. Good. Let other markets learn from what happens when you let profiling slide. She allowed herself a small smile. That evening, Leah returned to her aunt's townhouse. Geraldine greeted her with a cup of chamomile tea. Leah, you really said level 5. Geraldine, I did. People need to know profiling isn't a mistake. It's a breach of safety, of trust, of law. Leah sipped her tea. You changed everything with one call. Geraldine looked out the window at the lights of the Capitol. One call, but you, she nodded at Leah's still unspoken presence, showed that justice doesn't need shouting. It needs structure. Leah considered that. I always thought power lived in noise. Turns out it lives in the code. Geraldine smiled, ruffling Leah's hair. In the end, the system heard you, and so did the world. The morning headlines told the same story. Liberty Airways to disclose full ethics audit under Whitmore Protocol. Industry-wide reforms loom after NAEI clash. Silence strikes back. How a teen's steadfast presence changed federal law. Leah stared at the newspaper on the coffee table, then at her own reflection in the window. She caught herself nodding, as if recognizing a stranger who'd done something extraordinary without ever raising her voice. Outside, a plane soared overhead, its engines humming a reminder. Progress, like flight, takes lift. And sometimes, that lift comes from those who stand still. Leah woke to the thrum of her phone buzzing on her nightstand, way earlier than she liked. Blurry-eyed, she checked the screen. 21 missed notifications, 24 texts, and a flood of social media alerts. She sat up, heart pounding. The first notification she saw was a TikTok video. A shaky handheld shot, taken from the aisle camera, capturing the exact moment Sandra pointed at Leah and waved over airport security. The timestamp read 0012-027. Then came the view count, 3.8 million. Within minutes it ticked to 4, then 4.2, then 4.5. Comments streamed in. OMG, they actually called the cops. Her face says it all. Libraries of data can't hide this. Leah scrolled, stunned. She hadn't authorized any footage, but here it was. Her most humiliating moment played on repeat in living rooms across the country. And yet, no one was mocking her. No one laughed. Instead, people were using the comments to mourn, to rage. This is so wrong. #Whitmore Protocol. Legal guardian of the site, this is justice. I wouldn't have stayed that calm. Respect. The hashtag Whitmore Protocol was sizzling its way up the trending list, soon to surpass the situation's own hashtag, #Leah Whitmore. Leah took a steadying breath and tapped her cousin Marisol's name in her group chat. Leah, I think I just broke TikTok again. Marisol, you did more than break it, you rewrote it. She closed her eyes. The footage stung. Every time she watched, her chest tightened. But it was also strangely empowering. The world had finally seen what happened, in real time, unedited. No spin, no apology, just truth. An hour later, Leah logged onto her laptop to find the story splashed across every major news site. Teen's ordeal captured on camera sparks nationwide outcry. Video shows racial profiling in first class. Airports freeze 1.6 billion contracts. She just stood her ground. How silence triggered a systemic response. One article quoted Senator Martinez, "We must ensure that every passenger, regardless of background, can board without dread." Videos like this move us from policy into practice. Another from The Atlantic declared Leah the accidental activist, praising her calm under pressure. Leah clicked through a few articles, then paused on one from an airline industry blog. The headline read, "How the NAEI dashboard detected Liberty's pattern long before the viral clip." She started reading. Insiders say Liberty management was aware of profiling patterns, but without public outcry or a viral video, the incidents were buried in quarterly compliance reports. The Whitmore incident forced ethics officials to pull the automated trigger, validating the system's design. Leah set the laptop aside. People were talking about how the system worked, about how it should work, and somehow she'd become the catalyst. By early afternoon, a producer from a national morning show rang Leah's phone. Producer, bright, professional. "Hi, Leah. I'm Dana Price from Today Live. We'd love to have you on at 8:30 to talk about..." Leah, interrupting softly. "I'm sorry. I'd rather not do any live TV right now." She ended the call before Dana could react. Leah needed time to think, not a camera pointed at her face. Instead, she called her best friend Marcus, who'd been tracking flights for Liberty's suspended routes just as obsessively as she'd followed the video's view count. "Marcus, are you seeing this? They're talking about expanding the Whitmore Protocol to train every cabin crew in the country." Leah, "I know, I saw." He sighed. "I'm proud of you. But it's a lot, Leah." "You okay?" She hesitated. "Yeah, I just didn't expect it to hit so fast." He laughed gently. "Welcome to 21st century justice." That evening, Leah joined Geraldine in the study. The TV was muted, showing a split screen. On one side, the viral TikTok clip. On the other, pictures of airports with "service suspended" banners. Geraldine handed Leah a stack of printed screenshots. Tweets, news snippets, policy drafts. "Geraldine, social media forced the hand that law alone couldn't. Let's call it digital gravity." Leah flipped through the pages, eyes bright. "So now they're drafting Whitmore-based legislation? Something to codify these protocols into federal law?" Geraldine nodded. "Senator Martinez is championing a bill, the Passenger Dignity Act. It would formalize automatic ethics audits whenever a credible profiling case is recorded on public media." Leah closed the folder. "That's huge." "Geraldine, it's what happens when you pair a designed system with undeniable evidence. The video made it undeniable." Leah sat back. "I never planned to be an activist." "Geraldine, no, you planned to beat their silence. And you did." 2 days later, Senator Martinez's office released a public statement. "In light of the Liberty Airways incident captured on social media, I am introducing the Passenger Dignity Act, which leverages modern media accountability and secures automatic ethics audits under the NAEI framework." Headlines the next morning read, "TikTok clip spurs federal legislation. Passenger Dignity Act gains bipartisan support." teen silence echoes through Congress. Leah read the news on her phone while waiting for a coffee at a neighborhood cafe. A group of older women at the next table glanced over, whispering, "Is that her?" and then nodding approvingly when Leah looked up with a small, polite smile. That night, Leah tried to sleep but couldn't shake the ever-present hum of notifications. She finally drifted off only to wake at 3:17 a.m. to a text from her mother. "Mom, saw the news. So proud. You taught me something." Leah's eyes filled. She texted back, "Leah, love you." She stared at the ceiling, heart full, mind racing. By morning, the world had already moved on to new stories, but the Passenger Dignity Act had passed its first committee vote. Another milestone, airlines holding ethics training marathons over the weekend. Leah scrolled through her email. One from Aviation Today caught her eye. Leah Whitmore Q&A, the accidental trigger for industry reform. She clicked it open, an interview request. She hesitated, then replied, "Leah, I'd like to do this. Let's talk Monday morning." Her choice surprised her. She realized her silence had given power, but now her voice, modest, clear, and deliberate, might help shape the reform she'd started. Later that day, Geraldine and Leah walked outside for a quick lunch. The city felt warmer, friendlier somehow, like it had paused to catch its breath, reconsider, and then exhaled. A little boy ran by them, kicking a soccer ball. His mother called out, "Watch out!" Leah glanced at Geraldine, who smiled. Geraldine, see? Dignity isn't just in policy. It's in moments like that, knowing someone's looking out for you. Leah nodded. And in moments like mine, knowing the world will listen. They crossed the street together, side by side. Two generations, linked by one girl's calm refusal to move. The Capitol dome gleamed in the spring sun as Leah and Geraldine climbed the marble steps toward the Russell Senate office building. A crisp wind tugged at their sleeves, nothing like the stale airport air. Leah's heart hammered, but she kept her stride steady. This moment wasn't about fear, it was about purpose. Inside the hearing room, rows of desks and microphones awaited. The Senate Commerce Committee was gathered to vote on the Passenger Dignity Act. Journalists jostled for position. Cameras lined the back wall. Leah spotted Senator Joanne Martinez at the dais, reviewing notes with her staff. Martinez caught Leah's eye and offered a small, encouraging nod. Leah inhaled, smoothing her blazer. Her nameplate sat at the witness table. Leah Whitmore, Witness for Passenger Dignity Act. She took her seat beside Geraldine, who gave her hand a quick, reassuring squeeze. The chairman's gavel cracked. "Chairman," clear, formal. "We reconvene to consider S-2387, the Passenger Dignity Act, submitted by Senator Martinez. The clerk will read the bill's title." A clerk stood, reading with practiced neutrality. Clerk. An act to require immediate ethics audits upon credible reports of racial profiling in passenger cabins, to mandate transparent reporting under the National Aviation Ethics Index, and to empower the Department of Transportation to enforce compliance. As the clerk concluded, Martinez stood. Senator Martinez. "Mr. Chairman, colleagues, this bill is born from a single video. A brave young woman, unjustly removed from her first-class seat, her boarding pass perfectly valid, yet treated as a criminal. She did not shout. She did not resist. She simply stood her ground. That moment, and the systemic inaction before it, demanded a new law. I submit to you that dignity, not drama, must guide our skies." Polite applause rippled through the room. Martinez nodded and returned to her seat. The chairman cleared his throat. "Chairman, thank you, Senator. We will now hear from the first witness, Ms. Leah Whitmore." Leah rose, bracing against the microphone. She glanced at the senators, 50 pairs of eyes waiting. She swallowed. Leah, steady. "Chairman, thank you. Members of the committee, I'm Leah Whitmore. 2 months ago, I boarded a flight with a valid ticket, sitting in seat 2A. I never imagined I'd be let off in handcuffs. accused of fraud, simply because of my race. The system that should have protected me failed, but the National Aviation Ethics Index, my ANT system, detected a pattern of profiling. It triggered a freeze of $1.6 billion in contracts and demanded change. Then, a video of my ordeal went viral. Suddenly, people listened not because I screamed, but because I stood still, and the evidence spoke for itself. She paused, scanning the room. Leah, this bill ensures that no matter who we are, our age, our background, our rights are upheld automatically when credible evidence emerges. Pass any video, any credible complaint through this law's filter. Enforce it swiftly, because justice delayed is dignity denied. A murmur of approval. Martinez leaned forward, proud. Senator Smith, from opposite side. Ms. Whitmore, thank you. Quick question. Do you believe requiring airlines to publish audit reports will deter profiling or lead to simply burying more complaints? Leah met his gaze. Leah, transparency is two-edged. It forces accountability. If airlines know that every incident, every blank stare, every ground-to-coach order will appear in a public audit within 24 hours, they'll think twice, and they'll train their crew accordingly. The senator nodded. Martinez signaled to the clerk, who handed Leah a copy of the draft audit report template. She flipped through it, then looked at the committee. Leah, this template covers all passenger classes, cabin zones, and demographics. It's thorough, it's immediate, it's justice by design. Soft applause. The chairman rapped his gavel. Chairman, we'll now hear from one additional witness, Ms. Geraldine Banks. Geraldine rose, moving with quiet authority. She adjusted her jacket and faced the committee. Geraldine, thank you, Chairman. As the final certifier of the NAEI, I oversee ethics scores for 41 airports. Our system is automated. Patterns trigger flags, not emotions. But standards must evolve. This act codifies what NAEI already practices. It bridges technology and law. I urge you not to view it as punitive, but as preventive, a way to guarantee equality before boarding. She returned to her seat. Martinez stood again. Senator Martinez, thank you both. We'll proceed to a committee vote. All in favor of reporting S-2387 to the full Senate, please raise your hands. Hands rose. Unanimous. Applause filled the chamber. Leah exhaled. She sank back, heart racing with triumph and relief. Outside the hearing room, reporters pressed microphones forward. Reporter, off camera. Ms. Whitmore, how do you feel about the unanimous vote? Leah paused, then said quietly, Leah, I feel hopeful. This bill isn't about me. It's about every silent passenger who deserves dignity. As she walked down the hallway, staffers and interns nodded and clapped. Senator Martinez joined her. Senator Martinez, smiling. You were eloquent. Thank you for lending your calm to this moment. Leah shook her head. I just spoke what was already true. That evening, back at Geraldine's townhouse, mother and daughter reviewed the day's headlines. Passenger Dignity Act clears committee unanimously. Senate on track to enshrine Whitmore Protocol in U.S. Code. Teen's testimony praised for poise and clarity. Leah stretched out on the sofa, exhaustion finally settling in. Leah, Auntie G, can I ask, what do you do when it's all over? Geraldine sat beside her. I keep watching. The system is only as good as its next detection. We refine, we improve, we guard against complacency. Leah nodded, understanding dawning. Leah, then I'll be your guard, my voice when your code goes silent. They shared a quiet smile, two guardians of dignity, different generations, united by a single moment of stillness. The private lounge at Reagan National was nearly empty by late afternoon, the hushed murmur of departing dignitaries echoing against marble walls. Leah settled into a plush leather chair beside a low table strewn with untouched hors d'oeuvres. Across from her, Geraldine Banks sipped mint tea. her posture as composed as ever. Leah watched the steam rise from the cup. She'd learned to read her aunt's subtle cues. Today's meeting wasn't just any mother-daughter chat, it was a reckoning. After a moment, Geraldine set her cup down. She let her gaze drift to the massive windows overlooking the tarmac, where planes taxied in neat lines. Then she turned back to Leah. "Do you remember when I first told you why I created the NAEI system?" Geraldine asked. Leah nodded. "You said it was after something happened on a flight when you were younger." Geraldine closed her eyes briefly. "It was 1981. I was 20, fresh out of college, determined to see the world. I bought a one-way ticket in coach and earned an upgrade at the gate, just like anyone else. But the moment I stepped into that first-class cabin, a passenger took one look at me, black, in a plain skirt suit, and sneered." Leah's heart ached. She knew the story, but hearing it again now, in this rare, quiet space, felt different, more real. Geraldine continued, voice soft but firm. "The flight attendant whispered into her collar mic, then asked me for my ticket. At the same time, a man in the seat ahead pulled out his boarding pass to prove mine was fake. Within minutes, I was escorted off the plane, standing in the aisle with every seat curved toward me like a jury. I had the pass. I had the right. But none of that mattered." Leah reached across and took her aunt's hand. "I'm so sorry." Geraldine shook her head. "Don't be. What matters is that I let them do it." I sank into my seat in coach, head down, convinced I'd be fired from my new job before morning. I thought, this is the world. I can't change it. But you changed it. Leah swallowed. "I just sat there. I didn't fight." "That's exactly it," Geraldine said, squeezing Leah's hand. "You didn't raise your voice, but you refused to leave. You stood steady in front of an entire cabin full of strangers and said, without words, 'I belong here,' and the system we built recognized it." A flutter of pride warmed Leah's chest. She remembered that moment. Sandra's sneer, the officer's grip on her elbow, the hush that fell over the cabin. At the time, her heart had pounded so hard she thought it would burst. Now it felt like something strong, rooted. Geraldine stood and walked to the window, folding her arms. She pointed to a sleek Delta jet landing just beyond the glass. "In all these years, every time I saw a dash of red on that ethics dashboard, meaning profiling, discrimination, I felt powerless to stop it," she said quietly. "I built protocols, triggers, alerts, but I was always haunted by my own silence in 81. I never set foot in first class again without feeling that ghost beside me." Leah watched her aunt's reflection in the glass, superimposed on the plane. "You carried that memory for decades." Geraldine sighed, nodding. "Until you showed me we could break the cycle. You gave me the proof I needed, that a system, given the right data, can enforce justice without rage or chaos. You made my ghosts vanish." Leah blinked back tears. "You saved all of us, Auntie G, not just me." Outside the lounge door, a staffer walked by, adjusting a tray of sparkling water. Leah smiled at them, feeling the hush of respect that draped the room. It wasn't a trophy or a headline. It was the quiet dignity she and Geraldine shared. She stood and went to the window beside her aunt. Planes rolled across the runway lights, engines humming in the distance like a lullaby for progress. "Mom used to say," Leah began, turning back to Geraldine, "that our ancestors walked so we could stand. But I never understood until today that standing still can move mountains too." Geraldine's lips curved. "Yes, our ancestors may never have boarded in first class with peace of mind. But you did, and in doing so, you carried their fight forward." Leah nodded, drawing a slow breath. "I feel connected, like I'm part of something bigger than myself." Geraldine laid her hand on Leah's shoulder. "You are. You're the next link in a chain that goes back generations, a chain of quiet courage." Leah looked down at their joined hands, her small fingers wrapped around Geraldine's larger, lined ones. She thought of the flight attendant's sneer, the security officer's grip, the hush of 100 passengers. And she thought of all the invisible people: black engineers flagged, Muslim travelers patted down, LGBTQ couples met with suspicion, whose stories still lurked in the system, waiting for an awakening. She straightened. What do we do now? Geraldine smiled, a spark lighting her eyes. Now we keep watch. We refine the system. We train new auditors. And we make sure the Whitmore Protocol never sleeps. Leah laughed softly. A lifelong job? A sacred one, Geraldine corrected. They stood together, the two of them dwarfed by the high ceiling and the expanse of runway lights. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the distant thunder of a jet taking off whispered through the glass. Then, Geraldine raised her teacup in a silent toast. Leah mirrored her, still holding her aunt's hand with the other. To the quiet ones, Geraldine said, voice low. To the ones who stand, Leah replied. And as they drank, the runway lights blinked in rhythm, silent sentinels applauding a reunion generations in the making. A week had passed since the Senate committee vote. The Passenger Dignity Act was headed for a full-floor debate, and Leah's life had settled into a strange rhythm of interviews, school assignments, and quiet moments at her aunt's townhouse in Baltimore. That afternoon, Geraldine was in her home office finalizing a presentation for the FAA's ethics board when Leah wandered into the room, clutching a thin envelope. I got something in the mail, Leah said, turning it over in her hands. No return address, no stamp, just her name, printed in neat type on thick cream paper. Geraldine looked up, curiosity in her eyes. Open it if you'd like. Leah eased the envelope open and slipped out a single sheet of stationery. The handwriting was delicate, almost impossibly small and precise. Dear Ms. Whitmore, I'm a former flight attendant, one of the ones who stood by when the crew called security on you. I watched from the galley as you handed over your boarding pass, saw the way you folded your hands, heard the silence you made everyone swallow that day. I didn't know then how wrong we were. I was too afraid of losing my career to speak up, but your quiet dignity haunted me. I've carried that moment in my heart every day. I resigned last month after I learned what happened to your aunt's funding freeze and how it was your calm that powered the system. I needed the courage to stand by my beliefs the way you did. I wanted you to know you weren't alone. There are dozens of us who remember, who are working now to train cabin crews on true hospitality and respect. We don't have your platform, but we have our hands, ready to help. Thank you for your stillness. Because of you, we're finding our voices. Sincerely, a friend in the galley. Leah's eyes darted up to Geraldine. She stood by me? Geraldine reached out, touching Leah's arm. Not just stood by, she watched. And she learned. That's the ripple your moment created. Leah read the letter again, slowly, savoring each sentence. Her breath caught on the phrase, I was too afraid of losing my career to speak up. She remembered Alicia's apology back on the flight, and Jonas's quiet support from behind the curtain. My heart, Leah whispered. I never realized how much courage it took to even watch. Geraldine nodded. Sometimes the first step is simply witnessing the injustice. A knock at the door startled them. A courier handed Geraldine a thick binder with Liberty Airways third-party audit stamped on the cover. Geraldine took it gratefully and waved the courier out. Then she opened the binder on her desk. Inside were crew evaluations, incident reports, and, most telling, anonymous testimonials from flight attendants and ground staff. Many echoed the letter's sentiments: regret, fear, a desire for change. Dozens of pages had been crossed out or redacted, but enough remained to show systemic remorse. Leah flipped to a clean, unredacted page. I've served on over 500 flights. I never felt less safe than when we decided you didn't belong. I teach conflict de-escalation now, in hopes no one else goes through what you did. Her chest tightened. They're training people because of me. Well, Geraldine said, pulling Leah beside her. Because of you and the legacy you carried forward. Leah set the letter from "A Friend in the Galley" atop the audit binder. I wish I could thank her. You will, Geraldine said. Once hearings are over, I'll arrange a private meeting, but for now, keep her words close. Leah nodded, sliding the letter into her planner. In a way, it felt like a mantle being passed, an unspoken vow between two strangers who'd never met face to face. Later that evening, Leah went for a walk along the inner harbor. The water glimmered under the streetlights. The briny air felt like freedom. She pulled the letter back out and stared at the salutation. A friend in the galley. Who were they? Sandra's old partner? A senior flight attendant? Someone who'd been on that exact shift. The mystery felt comforting. A reminder that courage can hide behind anonymity and still make itself known. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Alicia, the Latina flight attendant who'd apologized during the flight. Alicia, heard about the letter? So proud of you. The galley isn't always silent. Leah typed back. Leah, you all have voices. Yours mattered to me. She pocketed her phone and looked out over the harbor, thinking of every person who'd chosen to act, no matter how quietly, because of her example. When she returned home, Geraldine was at the kitchen island, pouring chamomile tea. Evening, she said. Want some? Leah joined her. I opened the audit binder. Those testimonials. Her voice trailed off. Geraldine nodded. It's more than data. It's human stories. People admitting fault, wanting to do better. They sat in companionable silence, each cradling a warm mug. Outside the window, traffic hummed softly. Leah took a breath. I didn't think I'd ever want to be recognized for anything. But these words, they feel like the real reward. You deserve it, Geraldine replied. It's one thing to spark change through policy. It's another to reach hearts. They toasted their mugs, two generations united by a shared faith in quiet courage. That night, as Leah lay in bed, she thought of a friend in the galley. She wondered if one day she'd meet them face to face, maybe thank them in person. Then she drifted to sleep, comforted by the knowledge that justice, once triggered, could bring redemption not just to the powerful, but to the guilty and the afraid. And that sometimes, a single letter could heal more than 1,000 speeches. 2 days after the Senate's unanimous committee vote, the halls of the FAA headquarters buzzed with purpose. Regulators, airline execs, and airport coalition chairs gathered around a sprawling table under bright fluorescent lights. On the projection screen floated a single phrase, Passenger Ethics Accord, the formal name for the Whitmore-inspired reforms. Geraldine Banks stood at the head of the table, her calm presence anchoring the room. To her right sat representatives from Boston Logan, Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson, Chicago O'Hare, and BWI Baltimore Washington. To her left, Liberty Airways' newly appointed Chief Compliance Officer, plus airline reps from regional carriers who'd volunteered to pilot the new protocols. Today, Geraldine began, we move from reaction to prevention. The Passenger Ethics Accord is our binding agreement. Every major U.S. carrier will adopt automated ethics audits, transparent reporting, and mandatory crew retraining on non-discrimination. Her voice was steady, every word deliberate. A murmur of assent rippled around the room. The Boston Logan chair leaned forward. We've already signed the preliminary draft. We'll freeze lounge access and ground handling for any airline that falls below compliance thresholds. Atlanta's chair nodded. And we'll withhold gate assignments until carriers demonstrate quarterly ethics improvements. Geraldine switched slides to crew retraining modules. Under this accord, all cabin staff, first class to coach, will complete a standardized bias recognition course every 6 months. Completion rates will feed directly into the NAEI score. A quiet ripple of appreciation spread through the room. Carla Reyes, Geraldine's ethics officer, added, we're also establishing an anonymous reporting hotline staffed by third-party auditors so no incident can be buried again. Liberty's officer cleared his throat. We accept these terms. This morning, our board signed the accord. We'll submit our first compliance report within 30 days. Applause broke out. Polite, but genuine. Geraldine allowed herself a small smile. This was what systemic accountability looked like. Not finger-pointing, but structured change. Back at the townhouse that evening, Leah listened as her aunt recounted the day's outcomes. Every airport coalition had agreed. Every major carrier had inked the accord. Independent auditors were being hired, and the NAEI dashboard would now broadcast real-time compliance scores to the public. Leah leaned back on the couch. "It's like the world finally decided that silence isn't neutral," she said. "It's complicity." Geraldine nodded. "Exactly. We've turned inaction into action." Leah thought of a friend in the galley, and Alicia and Jonas, people who'd witnessed injustice up close, believed they'd been sidelined. Now, they'd be part of the solution. "Do you think they'll notice?" she asked, meaning the frontline crews. "They'll see mandatory trainings, they'll get new support systems, and they'll feel empowered to speak up, knowing their concerns lead to real change." Geraldine reached over, squeezing Leah's hand. "Their voices matter. Now the system listens to every one of them." A week later, in a quiet corner of Reagan's first-class lounge, Leah spotted Alicia refolding a safety card. She waved her over. "Hey," Leah said, smiling. "How's it feel, knowing your feedback shaped national policy?" Alicia's eyes glowed. "Surreal. I got an email this morning. Your suggestion for conflict de-escalation workshops has been incorporated into the new training." "Me? A suggestion?" She laughed. "I never thought I'd help rewire a multi-billion-dollar industry." Leah grinned. "That's your power." Jonas joined them, handing each a bottled water. "And we're just getting started," he added. "Next up, ground staff and security teams. They're integrating us into their sessions too." They shared a moment of quiet pride. 3 former bystanders, now pioneers in a reformed system. That night, Leah journaled in her room, reflecting on the Accord's rollout. "Today the sky felt different. Every time I step on a plane, I'll know someone, somewhere, watched the data. I'll know that no one can dismiss me again. It's more than words on paper. It's a promise." She closed her journal and looked out the window at the runway lights twinkling below. The world of aviation had shifted, powered not by engines alone, but by collective conviction. And for the first time, every passenger, crew member, and regulator would share a common lifeline. The steadfast belief that dignity must guide every journey. Leah stepped onto the stage at the National Oratory Summit Banquet Hall, the same platform she'd once approached with a speech about local policy change. Tonight the lights felt warmer, the applause more personal. Families, teachers, and students filled every seat, their faces shining with anticipation. She glanced at Geraldine in the front row, a proud smile on her face. Then Leah looked out at the audience, drawing a steady breath. "Good evening. A few months ago, I boarded a flight to Boston with a simple goal: deliver a speech. I never imagined that sitting still in my seat would lead to nationwide reform, federal legislation, and an industry-wide overhaul of ethics. But it did. I didn't shout. I didn't storm the cabin. I just stayed in my seat, because I belonged there. And when the system saw the undeniable truth of my calm, it acted. Today, thanks to the Whitmore Protocol and the Passenger Ethics Accord, transparent audits, mandatory bias training, and immediate accountability are the new standard on every flight. No passenger should fear that their valid ticket won't protect their dignity. We often believe that change requires a loud voice, but sometimes it's the quiet ones, the steady ones, who rewrite the rules. So I challenge you, speak up, not only when you're hurt, but also when you see injustice. Use your voice through the systems that can listen, videos, reports, data channels. Demand that every policy respects every person. And if you ever doubt that your voice matters, remember this. You don't always have to shout to be heard. You just have to stand your ground and let the truth speak for itself. A hush followed her final words. Then applause rose like a wave, gentle, sustained, respectful. Leah felt tears prick her eyes as she nodded and stepped back, the weight of the moment settling like a soft blanket. Later, backstage, Geraldine hugged her daughter tight. "You did more than finish your speech," she whispered. "You changed the world." Leah smiled through tears. "We did," she said, thinking of every passenger, every flight attendant, every regulator who'd listened. We all did. If you loved this story, hit like and share it with a friend. Next time, we'll track down the mysterious friend in the galley who sent Leah that letter. Ring the bell so you don't miss it.